Good morning, everybody. I need to make sure that I kind of get you guys warmed up a little bit because I think the other day I screamed good morning. You weren't expecting it. And I think I saw someone fall out of their chair. So we're live, guys. So here we go with the big old good freaking morning. And what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Happy Friday. Welcome back. And again, good morning. Hopefully you guys are having an amazing start to your day. And I hope you guys had a really good night last night. And really hope you guys are ready to rock and roll and crush today and end the week strong and profitable. And we got a big day today, guys, right? We got Jackson Hole kicking off. We got Jay Powell speaking today at 10 o'clock. That could be something that moves the market and something that provides us with some awesome opportunities. So definitely talk about everything that we got going on for today. Really take this time to get you guys prepared, dissect everything that's on the watch list, build those plans, and make sure you guys are ready to rock and ready to roll. So inside the chat, hit me with a big old good morning. And if you feel up to it in the Zoom, feel free, open the mic and shout a big old good morning as well. And we will officially dive into it. Andrew, welcome to Market Mastery, brother. You need to come into the Zoom. So back inside of the Slack channel, you're going to see the Zoom links were posted. Feel free to come into the Zoom where you can actually hear the audio and at some point be able to open the mic and engage and all that good stuff, right? Andy, what's up? Angel, Spencer, Logan, Corey, Andrew, again, welcome in. Steve, and everybody else. Good morning, traders, and happy Friday. Let's dive into it. Let's talk about what we got going on for the day, right? Looking at the economic calendar to start, there's only two things going on today, guys, right? So we got some new home sales data. Again, not really the type of data that's a market-moving thing, so I'm not really too mindful about home sales. There we go. What's up? Good morning. First day in, bringing the heat. I freaking love it. What's up, buddy? And then the biggest thing that we have going on for today, guys, is going to be Jay Powell speaking at Jackson Hole, right? That's taking place at 10 o'clock today. So we got 30 minutes after the market open that if there's opportunity, let's attack it. 10 o'clock hits, we need to sit back and see how the market's moving and see how the market's reacting and really just go from there. All right, so 10 o'clock today, we got some key data. We got a key event. That's Mr. Jay Powell speaking at Jackson Hole. And then we'll see what we have in store for the day, guys. All right, but let's go right into the SPY. Let's break down the SPY into Qs. Let's talk about what we have for today. We will be discussing NVIDIA, Tesla, and Microsoft. I think there's some potential opportunity with those three today. So we'll definitely take some time, break those down, build the plans. And again, make sure you guys are all set, okay? So let's start with the SPY on the daily time frame as always, and let's start to identify our most significant zones for today. All right, we got 4 of them. So first zone that we have here is going to be between 557.04 to 557.32. Now, I wouldn't say that's like a key significant zone. I wouldn't say it's like the most significant zone we have, right? We like to rate these zones on a scale of 1 to 10, right? To really assess the significance. We're going to say this is a 5, right? It's definitely not an 8 or a 9 like some of these other zones, but it's definitely an area I want to keep on watch for today, all right? So again, that zone right here between 557.04 to 557.32. Right? It was Tuesday's low of day. If you take a look left, we can see that it was that high day rejection. We gapped up the next day. That's where we opened. We saw a nice push to the upside. Again, came down, hit it as a low a day. Nice little bounce. Same thing, hit it as a low a day. And then right here, we got pretty dang close as a high a day before we had that rejection. So what we can honestly do with that zone is we can tweak it just a little bit so we can go and capture that high a day there as well. But that just really gives us a pretty large zone, right? So then that zone would be between like 556.70 to 557.33, but at least you get that high a day inside of that zone as well. So let's just go ahead and leave that as the zone, right? And we'll just see, you know, what the price does around that zone today. But the biggest reason I want to identify that zone and keep it on watch is because we had really, really good price development off that zone yesterday as really nice support, got below it, held below it as resistance, and we failed to get back above it. So that is going to be an area that I do want to watch for today, but it's a pretty large zone, right? It's pretty wide. It's about 60 to 70 cents wide, so a lot can happen in that 70-cent window. It's definitely not as significant as some of these other zones, and it's definitely not as tight. But again, let's keep that one on watch, right? And then your next lower zone of support for today will be down here between 554.72 to 555.05 here on the SPY, right? It's going to be yesterday's low of day, Wednesday's low of day, last Friday's high of day. So there you have your 3 touch points. Then we have that high of day. Then we have that high day rejection. If you go into a 5-minute time frame on that July 23rd candle, where you see that daily upper shadow through it, we actually had some good price movement that day off that zone. So again, validates it. And then again, nice little high day rejection. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different touch points in that zone. That's going to be a pretty key zone for today. Those are going to be your 2 lower zones of support that you guys want to be watching today. Talk about some overhead levels of resistance, right? First zone of resistance will be here between 559.52 to 559.64, right? It was that low of day where we saw a pretty nice bounce. It was this high of day before we saw that really big daily rejection. Again, it's where we came up to this Monday, hit a high day and a close right at that level. And again, when you take that zone on the daily, we can clearly validate it. We see those multiple touch points. It definitely stands out. We go back into that 5-minute time frame. We can see that we've moved around that level really nice here over the past few days. Again, that was Monday's close and high a day. Hit it again as resistance on Tuesday. Held it as support at the open here on Wednesday. Got back above it. Held it as support. Cracked below it yesterday. Got pretty close as resistance, and then we flushed. So that's definitely an area that stands out to me, especially when we drill down into that 5-minute time frame and just see how we've developed and moved, off that level here over the last few days. So that's going to be another area that I want to keep on watch, 100%. And we're starting to push above it right now at this point in time. So again, that was between 559.52 to 559.64. And then your next area of resistance overhead is going to be this zone right here. And that's between 560.64 to 560.83. So you got your 2 key zones of overhead resistance, 2 key zones of lower support. Now we drill down into that 5-minute time frame, really start building some hypothetical plans. Like what if the SPY falls back below that zone, pushes back into it, and retests it as resistance? Like, what would we want to do? Well, we would absolutely want to short this because we would be expecting to see some downside. If we fail to hold that zone of support, we crack it and retest it, we're simply looking for the opportunity to play the short. Where to? Our next key zone of support. Okay, but if we see the SPY able to hold above that zone as support, then we could look for a long opportunity here on the SPY. So we came up to that zone, hit it as resistance in pre-market, we dropped. Hit it again as resistance, we dropped. Now we're breaking above it. If we see the SPY open and we pull back into the zone and hold it as proper intraday support, I would be interested in playing the SPY long if we hold above that zone. Where to? Our next daily zone of resistance. So let's go ahead and label this area as our initial line in the sand for today, right? Because that's going to be a make or break. We hold above it as support, we know the odds are to the upside. We should get long. If we fall back below it and see a proper retest as resistance, we know the odds are short. We should be looking to get short. So let's label that our line in the sand here for today on the SPY. And again, that zone is here between 559.52 to 559.64. Just want to see how the SPY moves around that zone today. And if we see some good movement, we see some opportunity, definitely think we could be looking for some trades depending on what the SPY does off that zone. All right. Moving on to the Qs. Let's talk about what we got going on with Q here. Right on the daily, start finding some of those key zones. So top zone of resistance for today here on the Qs, I have up here between 482.95 to 483.44. My next zone that I have is right here between 480.17 to 480.41. Now, you probably don't have that zone yourself. It's a light zone. It's just an area that I want to reference, right? It was the low of day before the gap down, right? And then you can see we kind of had a little spinning top here on Tuesday's candle, right? That is a spinning top doji candle that we saw here on Tuesday. And so if I go ahead and just mark up that spinning top doji's open and close, and I create a zone around it and then drag it left, it just so happens to line up with that low of day prior to the gap down. And we know that those low of days prior to gap downs are pretty significant points. They're respected in the future. Same thing with the gap down highs, right? They're respected as areas of support resistance. So I went ahead and just drew up a zone off of Tuesday's open and Tuesday's close, that little spinning top, drug it left to see if I had multiple touch points. And I do. I have a valid touch point. Again, it was that low of day prior to the gap down. It's not the most significant zone we have, but it's an area that I want to keep on watch. Okay, so again, that area here between 480.17 to 480.41. Lower zones of key significant support. First area to the downside, 476.27 to 476.49. And then your other lower level of support for today here on the Qs is down between 473.81 to 473.98. Right, so we got our two key zones of resistance, two lower zones of support. Let's go ahead and drill this down into a 5-minute time frame, see where we're at, start building some plans for today. All right, so the Qs right now coming up into that zone of lighter resistance, right? It's not the most significant zone, but it's an area that I do absolutely want to keep on watch here today. Okay, so I'm not really looking for any kind of trades off this zone the second we hit it, unless we see proper movement off that zone when the Qs open on up. So if we come up into the zone and tap it, I'm not just going to get short because it's a light zone of support resistance. But if we come up into it and we see a proper short setup, maybe we see a break, we crack back below it, retest it with a lower high. Like if we see that kind of short strategy presenting itself off that level, then at that point in time, I would feel pretty confident to look for a short, just based on how we're moving and setting up off that level, right? If we see a strong break through that level, pull back into it and see, hey, it's actually holding as pretty nice intraday support, and we have another reason to back up a long trade at that point in time, then I would be confident and consider getting long off that zone up into our next zone of resistance. But again, just to stress, it's not the most significant, strongest zone that we have, right? It's a light area that I'm really just using as reference to see, do we even have any movement or development off that zone? If not, I'm going to delete it. But if we start to see some good action around that level, there could be a trade that presents itself. But if it just comes right up into it at the start of the day, it's not a key level that I'm willing to get short off of. I got to see more. I need to have more reasons to feel confident to take any kind of trade off that level. But let's keep it on watch and see if it is a valid, respected zone for today. Again, that's between 480.17 to 480.41. But let's go ahead and just make the assumption that we're validating that zone, that it's being respected, and we feel confident to take some trades off of it. Pretty simple. We break it and we hold it as support. We simply look to play the Qs long into our next daily zone of resistance, which is up here between 482.95 to 483.44. We see a proper short setting up off that level. We fail to break above it. At that point in time, we would be interested in looking to get short. Where to? Our next lower zone of daily support, which is going to be down here between 476.27 to 476.49. Okay, so that is the breakdown on the SPY, the Qs. Those are a couple of different game plans to start the day at 9:30. The one thing I will say is I'm just not a fan of where we're going to be opening today. Yesterday was a great day, right? A lot of opportunity. Even Wednesday, great day for that gap fill rejection. A lot of opportunity, really clear zones and levels to trade off of. Today, I'm just not crazy about these levels. I'm just not crazy about these zones and crazy how we're going to be gapping up and where we're going to be gapping up at. So I'm not personally a fan of where we're going to be opening in the market. And if I'm not a fan of where we're going to be at, and I have lower confidence today based on the location, I'm going to tread lightly, right? I'm going to reduce risk. I'm going to sit back and be even more patient today to really make sure that the trades are the best freaking trades off of these areas. But really make sure they're being validated first before I look to jump into a trade. All right, so I'm going to tread lightly. I'm really just focused on capital preservation and really making sure that the setups we take are proper. But that is what I got for you guys today on the SPY, the Qs. So now let's go ahead and move on to the 3 individual stocks that we have on watch for today. And this really depends on how the overall market does. So NVIDIA, Tesla, and Microsoft, these will only set up and present themselves if the market rolls and drops today. So if we see the SPY, the Qs rolling on over, dropping on down, very, very realistic that we see NVIDIA set up, Tesla set up, and Microsoft set up, because I see 3 potential shorts on those 3 stocks. But if you see the overall market moving higher today, there's not going to be any short opportunity with NVIDIA, Tesla, or Microsoft. Because what I'm looking for on these 3 are continuation plays, right? So look at NVIDIA, right? Massive drop to the downside, right? On an increase in volume. We have a strong close near yesterday's low of day. Same thing with Tesla, right? Very big drop yesterday. Strong close near low of day with a slight increase in volume. And then same thing here on Microsoft, right? Strong drop, strong close near low of day with a slight uptick in volume. So what I'm looking for is the possible second day of downside continuation. And so ideally, what do you want to see with that type of strategy? Ideally, on the second day, you want to see the gap down. Then it push on up into the previous day's close and low, get rejected, and then see that second day of downside. That's like the most ideal way for that to set up, is when we're gapping down on day number 2, right? Are we gapping down here on Microsoft below that zone of yesterday's low of day and close? We're not. What about Tesla? We're not. What about NVIDIA? No, we're not. We're going to be gapping up. But we could still see these set on up. It's not ideal to get the gap up on day 2, but I can't tell you how many times that we see a slight gap up on day 2. We eventually fall below the previous day's low and close, retest it as resistance, and then see that second leg to the downside, even when we gap up on day 2. So that's going to be the game plan for NVIDIA. That's going to be the game plan for Tesla. And that's going to be the game plan for Microsoft. All I want you guys to do on those 3 stocks, if you're interested in watching them today, is simply just take a zone, right, and mark up yesterday's low of day and close. On Microsoft, that gives you a zone between 414.69 to 415.55. On Tesla, that'll give you a zone here between 210.34 to 210.67. And here on NVIDIA, that would give you a zone between 123.11 to 123.72. Just mark up the previous day's low and close with a zone. Then drill down to your 5-minute time frame. What do you want to see on all 3 of these stocks to validate an opportunity to get short? Number 1, you need to fall below yesterday's low of day and close, that zone. So if we see price moving below that zone on NVIDIA, Tesla, and Microsoft, that's step 1. Step 2 is it needs to retest that zone and stay below it as resistance. That's step 2. Step 3, if that takes place, we're looking to get short along that retest, put stops above that zone, and then simply look to trade these short into our next lower zones of support, right? That's it. Pretty simple stuff. You just got to be patient to see if that even happens in the first place. So with NVIDIA, where's your next lower area of support that you would look to take that short down into if it sets up? I would say 120 first, right? At 120, it's a psychological level. And then if we end up falling below that 120 level, down around like 118.03 to 118.81. Okay, Tesla, right? Your next area of support, if we see that continuation play on out, I would say back down around 204, right? We can see all of that previous daily resistance, and it's right up against the 200-day moving average. So 204 would be your lower target here today on NVIDIA. And then if we're looking at Microsoft, right, your lower area today would be between 408.77 to 409.51. Those would be your targets on Microsoft, Tesla, and Nvidia if we see the stock falling below the previous day's low and close, simply retesting it as resistance. If that's what we're seeing taking place, then we have some great opportunity to look to get short on Nvidia, here on Tesla, and here on Microsoft as well. But it depends on the broader market, right? If the SPY and the Qs are still grinding and moving to the upside, everything's going to grind and move to the upside. If we see some weakening, we hear Jay Powell say something that spooks the market, and we see everything start to sell off, it's very possible that these things set up today, so let's keep them on watch, all right? But we're all set, ready to rock and roll. I got my eyes on Microsoft, Tesla, Nvidia. I'm like 50-50 as far as what I think. Like, do I think they're going to set up? I don't know. I'm like 50-50. So we'll keep them on watch and go from there. And same thing with the SPY and the Qs today. Like, just based on these zones and these levels and the location and how we're moving in pre-market, I'm just like, I'm 50-50 right now. I'm not as, like, eager or, like, not even eager, but, you know, dialed in or just excited for, like, some trades right at 9:30. Like, we had really good opportunity Wednesday at market open to execute some flawless trades. Same thing yesterday. Right at market open, we had some really nice opportunity to execute some flawless trades based on where we were at. Today, we're not really sitting at any key substantial level to where I'm like, hey, I think we have a trade right at 9:30. Just not a fan of where we're at. So I'm a little 50-50. So I see nothing worth getting involved with right at market open. I think it's going to be the market testing your patience. I don't think the market's going to do too much the first 30 minutes. We do have Jay Powell speaking. I think that's when the market starts to move a little bit, provide us with some opportunity, and we'll go from there. So I think the first 30 minutes, we may be sitting back patient on our hands and just waiting for the market to start to move a little bit, potentially as Jerome Powell starts to speak here at 10 o'clock today. All right. So again, you guys are all set with the SPY and the Qs, and we have 3 other decent potentials for today as well. That's Tesla, that's Nvidia, and that's Microsoft. All right. Now we got 8 minutes until the market open. So if you have a stock on your watch list that you want to review, let's review it. Or if you have a question about one of the stocks that we have already reviewed, go ahead and let me know.
Good morning.
Catherine, what's up? Good morning.
Doing pretty good today.
I love it. What do you got for me?
I have a question on QQQ.
Yep.
I have a zone mark. It's actually between 2 of yours. I have 478.19 to 478.69. What do you think about that?
69. All right. So you have a 478. I put it at 20. It's close enough. And you said 478.69.
It's about
All right, let's see where you're grabbing this.
So I saw let me see. It was from 8:20, which it was what, Wednesday? Tuesday.
Yeah, it was the low of day. So I see that low of day. If I look left, we got high day rejection. We break through it this day, retested the support. So 2 nice touch points. Yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And it was like
but I want to look at this day here.
It's also the opening from Monday, the 24th. June 24th.
June 24th.
A little more.
Oh, yeah, June. I'm like, okay. Yeah, June 24.
Right
Boop.
Right.
Yep, you got some points. So here's what I want to do. You definitely see a zone that's been hit as like high day, low day, opens and closes 6-7 times. I like it. First things first, let's go look and see how the price on the Qs moved off that zone yesterday with that big nasty red candle. And let's just go on a 5-minute time frame and work our way back and just look at some of these other candles on those days just to see, like, was there really good proper movement around that zone. So let's mark your zone in a different color so I know which one's which. I'm just going to mark it as like a fair value gap zone. But
I marked yours in a different color.
Yeah, I'm going to mark yours too. So let's take a look at that level from yesterday. So we came down and just flushed below it. But eventually when we did crack it again, had a proper retest and then moved lower. So I like that little crack and retest here. Let's work our way back little by little. Great support here on Tuesday. A little bit of resistance here Monday. You see you came up right to the bottom. You grinded for a moment, then broke through it. Not too bad. And I want to really get back to some of those other bigger candles that we had those days. So low day support, nice little pop. Support, crack, resistance, resistance, decent price development there. Crack, retest, break, retest. Yeah, I mean, really good price action there on that day. You can just kind of see how you had all those little pivot points off those levels. On that day, that was on July 18th. So, I mean, on the 5-minute, you know, we're just building some more and more conviction. The more we do this, we're building more conviction. And so I stop doing this until I'm convicted. And so far, I mean, I do like it. I mean, there's been some decent movement around that zone. Even on those days where we don't have a daily touch point, we can see intraday, we've done pretty nice off that zone in the past. I like it. I would keep it. Yeah, I do like it a lot, actually.
Bad, right?
I like it. I would keep it. I think that's a pretty sweet zone. I like it.
That was the only, everything else I had it. It was like just that zone. So I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah, I would keep it. I'm gonna keep it on mine. I like it. I think it's an area to definitely keep on watch. Look at you, Catherine.
I got one that you didn't have. Woo!
I'm going to tighten mine up a little bit, though. I am. I'm going to take the top end of mine down to 478.56. So I'm going to bring my
top. Is there
top...
any chance that we can tighten it up, or should we keep it like that?
I'm gonna try and tighten it up a little bit, and I'm going to let you know where my zone is after I do tighten it. So I'm going to tighten the top end of mine down to 478.56, just right up against Tuesday's low. And then I don't want to tighten the bottom up too much because I think we've already got it pretty dialed in. I would keep it right here at 478.14. Yep, so that's how I would keep it. 478.14 to 478.56. That would be an area to keep on watch today. Yep. I like it. I like it. I like it. I like it. And it's nice and tight, too. It's not huge. It's definitely a nice tight zone. We can see that even on these days where you're just like, man, price blasted through it or cracked below it with some force, we can see really good movement intraday those days. I like the zone.
Yeah, I just need to work on how to tight my zone, so I'm working on that.
Little by little, you got the right idea. You're finding the right zones. I mean, the zones that you see are definitely dialed in. Now it's just through more screen time and experience, you definitely get to start to tighten those up a little bit.
Yes.
So with all that being said, I don't like having more than 4 zones personally. I'm just not a fan of that. So I'm going to take this very, very lower one off because at this point, I just really don't see us getting there. And we have some other key zones that look to play off of today. So I'm just going to remove that absolute lower one down here just because I always like to have 2 lower zones of support, 2 key zones of resistance, and then if we start to crack and break those levels, I go find more, and we just continue to do that analysis intraday. But yep, that's what we're going to be running with the Qs. Lower zone of support, 476.27 to 476.49. Current zone of support that we can come down into 478.14 to 478.56. Zone of resistance, light resistance. Remember, this is a lighter zone. 480.17 to 480.41. And then your top zone of resistance here is 482.95 to 483.44. And then the last thing that you guys can do, what do we got until market open? We got exactly a minute. Just as a reference, it doesn't hurt to do this. Go on the daily with a fib extension off yesterday's high of day to yesterday's low of day, run it back up to yesterday's high of day. And just look and reference some of these fib extension levels just based on yesterday's massive drop. So we're starting to bounce back up, and where are we starting to see QQQ get rejected, like right here ahead of market open? Literally to the penny off that 50% extension. And so you see that one zone here that we just discussed, that light zone between 480.17 to 480.41, it happens to be inside of that fib extension's golden pocket. So that's another confluence, that if the Qs come up into that zone and we get rejected, that's also rejecting off of that fib's golden pocket. So that's another reason to be watching that level to see if we have a setup presenting itself off that level. And I would do the same thing on the SPY, have a fib extension drawn here from yesterday's high of day to yesterday's low of day as well. All right, market is open. We are all set, ready to rock and roll. Let's have a great day, guys. Let's crush it, and let's end this week strong and profitable.